Hi, and a very warm welcome to this Qualibrate demo. My name is Stephen, and in this demo of Qualibrate, we'll be looking at Qualibrate for Salesforce applications. Now, the standard approach that we see customers following in Salesforce implementations or digital transformation programs in general is they'll start off by creating business process documentation. This is normally business analysts mapping out the business processes at a high level end to end, and maybe they're using a business process modeling tool, and in some cases, they might even be using Excel or Word. Now, once the business process documentation is ready, it's shipped off to the developers who start to build the application. And in parallel, or when the application is ready, functional experts or even a dedicated manual testing team will create manual test cases. Now, the manual test cases will include detailed steps that have to be performed in the application, including relevant data and expectations of how the application will perform. And this is in order to validate that the application is built to spec. And you might have a dedicated manual testing tool for that, or you might again be using something like Word or Excel. Now, more and more customers are looking to benefit from automation, the ability to run tests unattended overnight as part of a continuous delivery process so that they can put more functionality more frequently into production. You want to build some automated scripts. And automated scripts are usually done in a dedicated test automation tool or test automation framework. And typically a more technical resource would be involved in this, either an automation engineer or a developer. And finally, before you put anything into production, you need to make sure your end users understand how the application behaves. It might be that they see the application for the first time, but they have to understand how the application behaves and how the business processes are supposed to work. So you need to create some kind of training material, some kind of user instructions. Now, you don't only have to do that on the implementation, but every time you make a change to the application once it is into production, you have to update your business process documentation, you have to update your manual test cases, you have to update your automated test scripts, and you have to update your training material. When in fact, you're actually describing more or less the same change, but for different deliverables. So if you're making a change to your sales order process, you're updating the sales order process documentation, you're updating the sales order manual test case, you're updating the sales order test automation script, and you're updating the sales order training material. And that's exactly the kind of problem that we're trying to solve with Qualibrate. With Qualibrate, what we do is we give the user the ability to record one time and output process documentation, a manual test case, an automated test script, and training material. And this means that if your application changes, you just have to update that one recording, and your process documentation, your manual test case, your automated test script, and your training material are updated automatically. And that works by, we have a recorder which targets your application, either SAP or Salesforce. It outputs a manual test, documentation, an automated test, and training, and it uploads to our Qualibrate repository. Some of the results that our customers have seen is this allows them to document faster, up to 7 times faster for documenting improving their documentation activities. It also allows them to test in a smarter way and with less resources. So up to 80% saving on time and resources on test-related activities. And also, it allows our customers to educate their end users or learn easier. So actually, about 60% of our customers are using Qualibrate to onboard new users to their applications. So just a brief introduction to explain the reasoning behind the development of Qualibrate. What I'd like to do now is just jump right into the application and explain how Qualibrate works. So here I am in the Qualibrate application. I'm just going to log into my next generation preview environment or project. Here we go straight into the dashboard. So the dashboard is just an overview. You have things like defects, the number of defects, the total number of flows. Flows is a concept that I'm going to explain in just a second. How often those have run, those flows have been executed, who is the owner of the flows, what is the status of the flows, who are the defects assigned to, what is their status, what is their severity, and how many flows have been executed over time. Now this is completely customizable. You can put in your own. We have some out-of-the-box dashboards, but you can put in your own. You can have time series reporting, etc. But 2 important concepts that I want to talk about are flows and scenarios. So flows are what we talk about as recordings or digital documents. And you can think of flows as a kind of building block. For example, if you've got a create sales order process, you can record it as a flow. And it could be the case that throughout your project, you're going to execute creating sales orders in various ways with multiple sets of data. And you do that in an order to cash scenario. So flows will be where we create the building block. We would create the sales order, but we would execute them in an end-to-end scenario, like an order to cash. So let's just have a look at how we create flows in the first place. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a flow. I'm going to call it a Salesforce demo. This is a demo of creating an opportunity from an account. I can assign a severity, so I can say this is critical. That's useful, for example, if I don't have time to execute everything. What I can do is I can decide to execute the most critical flows or the most critical scenarios, so that if I run out of time, I make sure that at least I execute the most important things. The status is new, I'll leave it. And I can also give it some tags for looking up later. So I'll say that this is for Salesforce, and then I'll save it. Now, once I've saved it, I'm taken to this kind of blank slate. Now I can add steps manually, but we're looking to be as efficient as possible and use automation as much as we can. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to go in and immediately hit record. And when I hit record, it's going to open up this recording widget, a very simple widget. It's designed to be simple for a reason. You can see a few things here. First thing is name your task. I'll come back to that. We can also save a recording. We can do some verifications. For example, I can verify certain things within an application, and I'll show that during the recording. I can take notes. I can store values. Storing values is useful, for example, if I want to create a quotation. A quotation number might be given by the application. It might be a unique quotation number every time I create a quote. I might want to store that quotation number and use it later when I'm processing an order. So I can also store values, and I can also do a cancel. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to log in to Salesforce. I'm going to go to my Salesforce application. Put in my username and password and hit enter. Now, just while Salesforce is logging in, if I open up this widget and I scroll back, we can see all the actions have been performed. So entered in the username, and here you can see, I can say, okay, let's take a note there. Please use a user with sales org 1000 privileges. Oh, good spelling. Say okay. I can see that I entered in my username, my password. By default, my password has been encrypted, but I can also change the values during the recording. So I can say, okay, well, actually, let's put it in as welcome123, and then I press on enter. So the next chapter or task I'm going to say is search account. So here I'm going to search for an account. So now I go to the accounts. I'm going to go into the search bar. I'm going to put in Qualibrate, press enter. Then I'm going to click on the Qualibrate account. Now I'm going to create a new chapter, and I'm going to call it create op from accounts. So I'm going to click on the new. I'm going to call this one Salesforce new opportunity. I'm going to put in a close date of 20th of May. And I'm going to set the stage as in proposal. Then I'm just going to save that. And finally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to verify the opportunity. And I'm going to do that by going into the opportunities tab. I'm going to search in the list for Salesforce new opportunity. Now I know it's the top of the list already, but this is just good practice for automating. And I'm going to verify that the account name is Qualibrate. Now, when I verify that, what you can see is the recorded value it's checking for is Qualibrate. I can open up the configuration here, and you can see here that I'm looking to verify that this inner text contains Qualibrate. Now, if I said, does it contain Qualibrate 1, 2, 3, and I do a evaluation, I can see it's false. If I change it back to Qualibrate and I do an evaluation, then I can see that it's true. So it's fine the way it is. I'm just going to save it, close this down. Then the final thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to log off Salesforce. I'm going to go here, log out, and then I'm finished. So I'm just going to save my recording and go back into the Qualibrate application. Okay, so now it's loaded, and what we have here is a digital document. You can see each of the chapters that we recorded. So we've got the login to Salesforce, the search account, the create opportunity from account, verify opportunity, log off. This is all drag and drop. So if I've made a mistake during the recording, I can either drag or drop. The first step in the login to Salesforce chapter is type in the username. Okay, I can modify that. If I've made a mistake, I can insert a step. I can record it from that step, and I can delete that step. Now, if you open it up, you can see type in the username. Here's the description. Please use a user with SalesOrg 1000 privileges that I recorded just as a note for anyone who might want to execute this. You can see here the screenshot of the actual application taken during the recording. Next step is to type in the password, press on enter. Then the next step is to search for an account. So click on the accounts. You can see that the accounts is highlighted. Then type in the search Qualibrate, press enter, click on Qualibrate, click on new, click on opportunity name, type in the opportunity name, click on the close date, type in the close date, click on the stage, etc., etc. So here we've got a digital document. It's got all the steps that have been performed, all the data that's been executed. It's got the screenshots with highlights so that you can understand where you are in the application. Now, what I can do with this is the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to run this in a manual way. And you can think about this for either as a training for an end user, an interactive training, or as part of a user acceptance testing. And this opens what we call the manual tester. Here you can see the chapters, log into Salesforce in a organized vertically, then search account, create opportunity from account, verify opportunity, log off Salesforce. So the first step is to log into Salesforce. So it says type in the username. I've got my description in case I'm not sure. I've got the value that I should be putting in. Now what I can also see here is some, let's say, other buttons. There's a pass button, so I can mark this step as passing. I can mark it as failing. I can skip this step. I can also show me, and if I click that button, you can see in the application it highlights. And I can also say do it for me. And what that means is it will actually perform the step automatically and will fill it in for me. Now the next step is to type in the password. So again, I can say, well, why don't you show me in the application where you mean? Highlights the field. And then I can say, do it for me. Enters it in. Now you can see that these two steps have been able to perform, so they're in green. And what I can do is I can also say, do it for me again to press enter. And it will press enter and log me into Salesforce. So just while Salesforce is logging in, what I can also do is I can raise defects automatically from here, and I can also take a screenshot. So the next step is to search, or the next chapter is search account. The first step is to click on accounts. So again, I can say show me, and it will highlight what to do. I can do that manually and say, okay, let's click on the account. And I was able to do that, so it passed. Now, when I press that passed, you can see that the color is actually a lighter green than here. The reason for that is this one's been executed manually. These ones were executed automatically. And we want to keep a separation in the log so that we know when users have done a step manually or automatically, because we might want to be running a training or a testing activity, and we want to make sure the users are actually going through the steps that we want them to perform. So now what we have to do is we have to enter in Qualibrate in the search. Then we have to press enter on a page, so just do it for me, please. Click enter, click on Qualibrate, click on new, click on the opportunity name, and enter the opportunity name. Then click on the close date, enter the close date, click on the stage, and enter in the proposal. So basically you can see that all the steps can be performed in a manual or an automatic way. You can pass or fail them. But what I'm going to do here, just for the purposes of this demo, is I'm just going to close this one off. I'm going to fail this step. I'm going to imagine we were clicking on save. I'm just going to fail it, see what happens. See, we get a failure, it goes in red. I'm going to close this down and I'm going to say let's exit. And I'll just close off the Salesforce application. I'll log out. I'll go back into Qualibrate. And what I'm now going to do is I'm going to have a look at my logs that have been created during the execution of that manual test. So here you can see I've got one log, it was just ran a few minutes ago. It failed. If we expand the log, you can see all the steps were performed. So the first step was to type in the username. Here's the time that was executed. It was run in an automated way. You can see the screenshot, including the highlight of the step, all the way down to searching for the account, pressing enter, clicking on Qualibrate, creating the opportunity, etc., etc. So this is kind of like an audit trail. You can see all the steps that are performed. You can see that it's been ones that have been executed manually. Don't have a screenshot because they were executed manually, although I can also take a screenshot. They were executed automatically. They have a run mode. You can see the data was used. You can see how long they were taken in milliseconds. So a full audit trail of a history of the execution on the application. Now what I can also do is I can, because this was a failure, I can automatically raise a defect from this. Hey, I found a bug. And you can see here all the steps that were performed up until we found that failure. So I can say, okay, that's great. Let's assign that to Marina. Let's say it's a configuration issue. And let's say that it's a critical defect. So this allows you to, very quickly give all the information required to the developers to allow them to go in and make a change or make a fix. They've got the flow that was where the bug was found. They've got a log of the steps that were performed in order to find the bug, including all the screenshots. And when they find it, they can basically update the defect. We'll run it again, or they can even run it and see if the issue has been resolved. Now, if I go back in here and have a look, what I can also have a little bit of a look at is my data sets. So here I've got a default data set that's been created. You can see, again, my chapters, got my username, my password that have been entered in. We're searching for an account, that's Qualibrate. When we create an opportunity, we create a Salesforce new opportunity. Again, I could change this. I could say create Salesforce new opportunity 2, and I can save it. Can verify an opportunity. Well, I may as well update this one also because it's the same. And then I can log off from Salesforce. Now what I can also do is I can make a duplicate of this one and call it EMEA Sales org. I can then take EMEA Sales org and I can export it to Excel. And if I open it up, then you can see the same data but in a different way. So what I could do here is I could say this is NL sales, FR sales, DE sales, and I could just copy the rows. And it might be for, I would use Qualibrate FR for that one, Qualibrate DE. So what this allows you to do is if you've got maybe core business processes that are going to be executed across different countries with different sets of data, you can basically allow your business to just fill in Excel files, and then we can re-import them back in. And once we upload this document back in, you'll see that we've now got 3 iterations. First iteration is going to just use Qualibrate as an account. Second iteration is going to use Qualibrate FR. And the third one is going to use Qualibrate DE. So this allows you to manipulate data in different ways. You can manipulate it directly in Qualibrate itself. You can export it to Excel, maybe give it to your business users in different countries and allow them to update with the data that they want, and then send it back to you for execution. Now, the final thing we're going to do is we're just going to run this automatically. I'm going to use the default data set, just the original one that we created. I'm going to hit run. And this will kick off our our automated tester, excuse me. And it will just go through the same steps that we performed previously. So it's going to go to the Salesforce login, enter the username, enter the password. It's going to then go and go to the accounts tab. Once the account's open, it's going to do a search for the Qualibrate account. Then it's going to click on the Qualibrate account. It's going to create a new opportunity. It's going to give the opportunity a name. So it's going to give it Salesforce New Opportunity 2. It's going to give it a close date of 20th of May. And it's going to put it in the proposal stage. And then finally, it's going to save it. Then we're going to do the validation that the opportunity has been created. So we go to the opportunities. We're going to search in the list for our Salesforce Opportunity 2. Then we're going to verify that the account name is Qualibrate. And then we're just going to log off. Okay. So now if I go back into Qualibrate, again, we're going to go back in and have a look at the logs. Here we can see we've got a new log, which is passed, as opposed to the previous one, which had failed. And if I expand all, you can basically see, similar to the initial one, we've got the chapter, we've got the step, got the start time, the elapsed time. These will all be run in an automated way. We've got the data that was used, all the way down from when we search on the account, through to creating the opportunity from the account, finally down to verifying that the opportunity belongs to Qualibrate. So again, complete audit trail, complete data going into the application. We've got the user that it was executed with. We've got everything that would be needed to basically prove whether or not the application was performing as we expected. So just for a quick recap, we've created a recording. From that recording, it's created this digital document. This digital document we can modify, we can drag and drop the steps around, we can change the data, we can basically whatever you want, you can modify it, you can record from certain steps. And we've executed it in a manual way, as if we were maybe running a user acceptance test, or what we would like to call an interactive training, where you have the target application and the steps to perform, and you can either be shown what to do, or it can be done automatically for you, and you can record the interactions. We've raised the defect from a failure. So we failed that manual test and we raised the defect. That defect included all the steps that we performed during the failure. We also ran it in an automated way. So the idea is you could put them together in a regression test and you could run them maybe unattended or overnight. The next thing we're going to have a look at is the scenarios. So the scenarios, I'm just going to create a new one. I'll call it a Salesforce demo scenario. And here I'm just going to, well, I've got my recently updated ones here. So I'm just going to choose my first one, my Salesforce. And in an end-to-end scenario, maybe I've got a SAP S/4HANA process also. So maybe once I create the Salesforce demo, which was creating an opportunity, maybe I want to create a sales order. And once I've created a sales order, maybe I want to do some invoice processing. So basically what we have here now is a scenario. The scenario is going to run in this sequence. It's going to run the Salesforce demo first. It's going to run the create sales order process second. It's going to run the invoice processing third. We can choose the data sets here. So I'm going to run this with my EMEA sales org. I can choose which way I'm going to run it. I could say, well, why don't we run the Salesforce demo automated? Why don't we run the sales order processing automated? But on invoicing, well, actually, there's some things I want to check there. So let's run that in a manual way. And that means when I execute this scenario, the first two flows are going to run in an automated way. And finally, the manual test will run manually. That's it for today's demo. Just to recap, in today's demo, we recorded a Salesforce business process using the Qualibrate recorder. The output was a digital document within Qualibrate that shows all the steps in Salesforce, including screenshots and data. We executed that as an accelerated manual test, very useful for user acceptance testing or exploratory testing. We used the information from that execution to raise a defect, which was pre-populated with all the information the developer would need. Then we also executed the process as an automated test, which can be run on demand or as part of a continuous delivery process. And finally, we showed how Qualibrate flows can be put together to form end-to-end scenarios. And that's why we say Qualibrate is test automation reinvented. Please visit our website, qualibrate.com, where you can find out more information, including our return on investment calculator, which details the benefits that Qualibrate can bring to your organization. And of course, you can contact us or follow us on social media. Thanks for watching.